Okay, folks, did get clearance that we are live. Erica, did you get confirmation as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Well, everyone, welcome to the Ripple Effect with David and Erica. And we have a special edition today with Dr. Richard Johnson, who to me it gave just a magnificent interview last time. So we're looking forward to catching up with him momentarily. And welcome, Richard. So great to have you.
Thank you, David and Erica. I'm so pleased to be here again. The first time we did this, I think it was a year ago, 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago.
Oh, it was during the pandemic, right?
Was it during the pandemic?
I believe so. I believe so.
Time goes by so quickly, but it was a fabulous podcast, and I loved every minute of it, and I'm so pleased to be back again now. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, and great. I did want to just let Erica introduce herself and do a quick check-in if she wants to before we get to you. But we did also want to do a catch up with you, Richard, about what the latest is with you. So first,
Sure.
I'm going to turn it over to Erica, and then she can set that up for us. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. The ripple effect has begun again, and I'm happy to be here with you both. And our some of our fans are tuning in. I know of one human who listens in that I get to see every week, so that's great. And thanks for tuning in. That's really cool. I am a psychotherapist here in the Bay Area, and I am a fruits and vegetables advocate. And David, did you mention about the amazing things that you do?
Yeah, I do a few different things, business coaching and video production. So among other hobbies and podcasting. So
Yeah, you're creating some really good mischief. I know I am. I'm creating this online course for post-pandemic defrag, so people can tune in for that. And I have different neat things coming up. So make sure to reach out to me if you have any questions about that. Love to have you be part of that if that sounds of interest. And let us get to our interview. Boop, 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 boop. Dr. Richard Greggory, how are you doing?
Doing well, doing well. Thank you again so much for having me. It's just a wonderful delight to be on the Ripple Effect, which is just Ripple Effect. I love it. I love it. That's awesome.
I did just want to give a little bit of background, Richard, on you, and then I'm going to have you introduce yourself. And we also want to catch up with you on what you've been up to, because I see you really do a lot of different things and exciting things. So, I've known Richard for several years now. He's a tenured full professor and department chair for the Department of Public and Nonprofit Administration, School of Management at the University of San Francisco, where I've been a professor for several years now. The program's been on a sabbatical, but I work with him in a professional capacity. And he's really a unique person because he's so, he really is tuned into a lot of current events, cutting edge research that he's done on the Me Too movement. He's really an authority there, and equity and inclusion, and also some different, we're not even getting to all his areas of expertise, but he also teaches on ethical leadership, public policy. And I know I'm leaving out a lot, but if you don't mind just introducing yourself, Richard, and telling us what you've been up to.
No, that actually you've said everything. That's perfect. I don't want folks to think I don't have a life outside of work. So
the last time we saw you, you didn't have that cool background that says National Academy of Public Administration.
yes.
You were like in the middle of some living room kind of vibe. Now you got the fancy background of what you're associated with, huh?
Yeah, that's right. So I'll tell you about that if you like in a second.
Yeah.
But I want to share, one of the things that binds and connects David and I is that we're both Georgetown University alums, and so that's a huge source of pride for both of us. And in fact, David, I don't know if you know, Georgetown will be in the Bay Area in April, I think, for alumni some awards thing. I don't know if you've RSVP, but I'll be there. So
no, I will. I'd love to come. Yeah.
Yeah, in San Francisco. Georgetown comes to San Francisco. Who knew, right? But yeah, Erica, regarding the background. So a couple of years ago in 2020, I was elected to what's called the National Academy of Public Administration, which was chartered by the U.S. Congress back during the 70s or so. And it's, when you think of it, it's kind of like the American Academy for Science. It's one of those types of institute, except that we focus on public institutions and making sure that government runs well and so forth. And the election process is quite grueling. It took me a couple of tries to be elected, but persistence is everything. And so I'm very honored to be a part of that organization. So yeah.
Great. And I know that's one
Call
thing
it-
that,
yeah, I'm sorry, we call it Napa Fellows for short.
okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That's really struck me, is all the different things that you kind of have a hand in, or have had a hand in, that you really play a major leadership role in the academic community. I know there's academics out there that they're just focused on their research and
Mhm.
producing research, but you're such a real world person that's out there kind of making change and meeting with people who are really leaders, and kind of the practicality of change, as well as the intellectual part of it. And if you don't mind just telling us kind of what some of that the other things that you've done, both
Mhm.
practical study, but also the courses that you teach academically.
Sure. In fact, I have a book that just came out with Professor Seth Meyer, who's at Bridgewater College in Connecticut. And that book is on teaching graduate students social equity via case studies. And it's an edited volume. So we've gotten some of the foremost experts to write chapters on their respective fields or subfields around social equity, and how do we really teach it, sort of going back to what you and Erica just mentioned, sort of these real world experiences, right? So it's more than just a theoretical book. It really is a how-to book, which is great. And then I actually have a second book coming out, if you can imagine. I say after this I'm done, no more books. I think this is like my 13th one or so, but
Wow.
yeah, so this book is with Professor Samuel Brown, who is at Old Dominion University. And the book is on multi-sector partnerships, and how can, because so many industries are siloed, higher education is siloed, and oftentimes, and the private industry is siloed. How can we all come together and work? How can we make government work better? They can't do it alone. No discipline or field can do everything by themselves. So therefore, how do we come together and make that work? So that book will be out, I think, within the next month or so. We're just going through the proof process now, and it's being published by Information Age Publishers. So we're very excited about that. And then in terms of the classes I'm teaching, this semester I'm teaching a wonderful class on people and nonprofits. So we focus on public policy, and we also focus on human resource management. And then next semester, of course, I'll be teaching the capstone for the MPA program at USF, MPA program, which is called Ethical Leadership. So it's,
Wow.
so I have a sort of a lot going on, but it's okay. It's all good. I love it. And also a shout out to my students in the MENA and the MPA program at USF. That I'm fortunate in that I have such amazing graduate students. So I really am glad about that.
Yeah, that was one of the, I actually think you invited me to speak at your ethical leadership course probably about over a year ago now. And I feel like um it was just such a great experience, that in order to really know something, you have to teach it. So I love to be able to share some of my real world experience in politics and get the reaction from your
Oh,
students, which is just a fabulous student body that we have there at USF. And those courses, how people respond to the instruction that you give. And I know you set that up great, but I really enjoyed that experience.
Well, David, I hope you got the memo. You're on deck for next semester already. So I will give you the date and time, but I definitely would love to have you come back. My students really enjoyed you.
Oh, thank you. And that's something I appreciate about you.
Can I have what you're having? It sounds really exciting and interesting what you're doing and teaching and how you're serving. And it's all grad students, no undergrad?
It's so funny that you mentioned that, Erica, because we are just putting in a proposal now for an undergraduate division. My department, which is the Department of Public and Nonprofit Administration within the School of Management at USF, University of San Francisco. We're the only department that doesn't have an undergraduate division, and that's a long story with that. We were the product of a merger 12 or 13 years ago, and that entity, which was what we call the old CPS, the College of Professional Studies. um, I don't know if they had an undergraduate division, but when they merged with the old College of Business, uh, they came over without the department was formed without an undergraduate division. So, and so the old College of Business is now the School of Management, because we have both sides of the house, the public side and the private side. And so, so with any luck, if everything goes well, we will have an undergraduate program
Cool.
within a couple of years or so. But we're also looking at doing a PhD program as well. So we'll see. A lot of exciting things going on. So
Cool. Well, if it's a fit for me to come be part of, and speak with your people, it's an honor and a privilege. And the projects that I've been up to, I imagine there's some overlay. But anyway, let's get back to our script of what we're supposed to be doing.
That's great.
I was actually going to suggest that we go off script.
Just go off
one, Erica, because I think his story is so fascinating about where he came from. So since we have the time, I just wanted to see if you could just tell us a little bit about how you came into being what you do now, an expert on some of these issues, because you have this academic journey in geography where you actually started out in the New England states, if I'm not correct. Well, you went to Georgetown, you were at was it Connecticut? And if you don't mind, just tell us a little bit about your history there.
Sure.
It was curious, that's for sure. I don't think that many people have a planned out academic journey, because you have to go where the job is. So the good fortune for me is that I landed at the University of Vermont, in Burlington, Vermont. Yes. Oh, that's Erica.
I'm an alum, 1992.
I knew we had a connection there. That's UVM.
Yeah.
And it was an amazing experience. I absolutely loved UVM. It's where I grew up academically, is where I cut my teeth as a professor.
Right on.
I loved everything about Vermont. And I think also what I loved about Vermont was Montreal. I loved going up to Montreal. It was fabulous. And so
Montreal.
Yes, exactly. And I miss seeing the French signage, that half of Vermont has, or most of Vermont has. So, but my goal was actually to stay there. I was tenured. I was an associate professor, and my goal was to stay at UVM. But then a couple of my colleagues at USF heard about my research, and they connected with me at a conference and said, we have this position coming up, would you like to, would you be interested? And I'm thinking, well, no, actually, because I'm already situated in, at UVM, and, purchased a home and the whole bit. However, I started thinking about how many times during the year I had to shovel my car with snow in Vermont. And I was like, San Francisco, maybe I could do that. And so, long story short, then I got the offer, and now I've been here 12 years. I still miss Vermont. It's a magical place, magical state. So, but yeah, this is my 12th year here at USF, and the time has gone by so quickly. When I got here, I was just this young buck, I think, and now I'm getting to a certain age. And because I was at UVM 11 years, so it's been a good run. But that's basically how I got to USF, and that was my academic trajectory, more or less, with a couple of stops before that, but not worth mentioning at all. But uh, and sometimes, like in life, you have to kiss some frogs before you find the prince or princess, right? And so I had a couple of kissing of frogs earlier in my career uh that were not good fits, but that's okay. We go on. So yeah.
Nice.
So, yeah.
I
So
got
that's
to
I just
visit.
have somebody at the door. I'll be right back here.
Okay. I got to visit over there back in May, and I'm connected with a school that's right there in North Burlington, Rock
oh
Point School. I one of my grants for the vertical gardens got
yeah.
over to this school called the Rock Point School. So I was
Oh,
over there visiting. Yeah, it's a great vibe.
I have a little cousin who's now at Bennington College. And
Uh-huh.
you know it's so interesting because I'm from New York, the East Bronx. um when my family relatives went away to college, they were, we were going south for the most part, and but no one was going to New England. So now, fast forward all these years, I have a little cousin who, of course, they're not little, they're little to me because they're like the next generation, right? But
Right.
I have a little cousin who graduated from, well, one from Skidmore, another graduated from, oh my goodness, the name is escaping me. It's in Maine, one of the small liberal arts colleges.
Bates. Bates.
Bates.
My
That's it. Oh my,
my niece is going there.
yeah.
They're in their first year. They're very excited.
Oh my goodness. My cousin Kayla, she graduated from Bates, Phi Beta Kappa, which I'm excited about. And
Right
now,
on.
yes, and well, she takes after me. 'Cause I graduated Phi Beta Kappa too, but that's another story. So anyway, but and she's at
Party
Michigan.
pants.
Well, I know, right? It was, I'm a nerd at heart, is what I am. So, um, and then my cousin who's at Bennington. So, really cool that
Yeah.
we the family's getting out of that sort of going only south for school. So yeah, really
Yeah, yeah.
cool.
It's New England is a whole different vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know the South Bronx. We have a whole thing with the South Bronx. I don't know if we'll get into it, but let's make sure we get back to your story.
Yeah, and just a little time check. We have about 10 more minutes. So I did want to make sure we get
Wow.
quick synopsis of some of his publications. We talked about his books, but I did want to revisit what he's done on the Me Too movement, and if
Mhm.
there's any other key publications you want to, or areas of study that you've looked at. If you don't mind just telling us a little bit about
Sure.
that work you did on Me Too and what your
Right.
findings there.
So, thank you, David. So the Me Too movement is, vastly important, right? But I also, the way that I address the Me Too movement is to ensure that that movement is inclusive of all women, right, and men as well, and non-binary people, and also, transgender folks. This is important, right? Because and this is what I write about. Like the Me Too movement could have been so further ahead when it was first sort of quote unquote introduced. It was introduced by an African American woman um, who was college educated, but her blackness came first, right? And people kind of ignored her. And it wasn't until celebrities with wealth started getting involved that the Me Too movement took off. Well, that's an issue, right? It's an issue because it erases so much of what came before these people, and so it's important that the Me Too movement not only stand up for women's rights, right? But it's important that it stands up for all rights. Like when people hear the slogan, Black Lives Matter, it doesn't mean that Black lives are the only lives that matter. It means that because of this country's insufferable racism, right, that persists, we say Black Lives Matter. But again, that's not to say that all lives don't matter. So I think we have to like one of the things that I write, I have a book that I'm working on now with two colleagues, Dr. Lori Naylor from the University of Baltimore and Dr. Jose Azari from
Nice.
University from,
I'm just saying, right on, nice.
yes, from yeah. And so we're he's from the University of Illinois, Springfield, and we're writing a book on allyship, right? Has never been done before, at least not in our field of public administration policy. And our goal is to talk about social movements and how social movements are impactful because they have allyships. Like I'm unapologetically a feminist, right? And and I did not learn that I was a feminist until I was at Georgetown when I was taking a course with Dr. Marsha Darling, and we were talking and about social movements, which is part of my background. And she said, well, men were part of the women's liberation movement during the late 60s, early 70s, and they would do blah blah. And I said, hey, wait, I would have been there too. And she said, and we would have loved to have you. It was just this whole sort of welcoming thing. So, and I know there's some debate with some women that men can't be feminists, but there are people.
Yes, they can. Yes, they
Right.
can.
Yes, exactly.
Inclusivity is feminist.
Inclusivity, that's right. Exactly.
Hello.
I mean, it was, when we talk about the civil rights movement, right? The March on Washington in the 60s, it wasn't just Black folks in that march. It was white folks, Jewish folks, gay folks, bisexual folks, pansexual, everyone, right? And there is there is this perception that if you're in a social movement, then you have to be part of that community, and that's not the case. We need everyone to assist us with everything. So and so this is the take that we are going with this book. We hope to have it out by July, which goes against what I just said, that I was doing no more books earlier in the conversation. But
Yeah, I appreciate those comments, Richard. And I actually studied feminism a lot when I was in England. I studied at Bristol and some of the history of the feminist movement. And
yes,
it's fascinating. I think one anecdote I had that we've actually talked about on this show, or I believe it was Quantum Leap, was actually Silicon Valley. There's still so few women leaders in Silicon Valley. And that's why I think that we actually, in order to facilitate a more balanced approach or attack on these issues, so to speak, we need to lift up more women to be in roles of leadership. And women can't be the only people who do that. It has to be kind of a broad-based approach to it. And, you mentioned a lot of that work that you did on social movements. So I think there's a lot of room for research and really an awareness that needs to come to Silicon Valley and our business sector, that we need more women leaders. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I absolutely agree with you. And I will point to the University of San Francisco, a Jesuit university, almost 200 years old, that is really leading by example. So our provost, our current provost, is the first woman. She's Black, but she's from England. Unabashed, unapologetically. Yeah, actually, just like so. But she's awesome. She is, when she interviewed, she told stories of her grandmothers in Nigeria, right, which is where she was born, and then the family moved to London. But she's unabashedly a Black woman, and then she's our provost, which is awesome. And my dean, we just and David, I don't know if you know this, but the School of Management just hired a new dean. And she is the second female dean we've had in the 100 years of the School of Management's existence. And she's from Mongolia. So, I think that this is so important because the University of San Francisco is, as we've just given to understand, the second most diverse college population in the United States. We vie for that title with UC Berkeley, but we really are trying to talk the talk and walk the walk. So so women leaders are, and also I will just say this, we hired a new associate vice provost, Dr. Sheila Smith McCoy, who is our DEI and faculty excellence person. She is fabulous from Duke University. And so you know, again, David, to your point, putting women in positions of authority is the way to go, right? Because if you want change, you can't have the same folks who occupy these positions in the past. You've got to have new blood and new energy, you know, and people with a clear idea of what change means.
Yeah,
So
that's so well put. Go ahead, Erica.
can I say something? So it's a practice, right?
Mm.
It's a practice, and then making room and a little more. And then I was just in a training I'd like to share, if that's okay. I was in a training on Saturday, assisting at a training for a whole different thing, surrogate partner therapy, right? And the person holding the training, to begin the training, they gave this whole disclaimer about their privilege that just, but you know, as a white male on the land that he is, and he honored the lands. Like I was just, it's such a beautiful thing to hear the words of somebody making room and letting everyone know that if they have any, if you're having an experience of feeling a shutdown, like
Yes.
I want to hear your feedback. I'm open, and I will receive your feedback in a kind and open manner. I forget the words. I took a screenshot of what he was saying, because he put it up in words and he said it with his mouth. So you know, do you also play with that, like what lands you're on and honoring? It
Yes.
feels like it's super spacious. So I just appreciate it.
I love that. I love the example. It's about creating that space, right? And so oftentimes, specifically with this new provost, she if she's called upon to speak, if you're having a celebration or a graduation or something, she will start by saying that we are on the land of the so and so, right? And then also, you know, I do think it's so important. It's important to acknowledge where we are, right? But it's also important to acknowledge the space that everyone can come into and feel celebrated, right? And and I think that's important. I really do. I like, so for example, another quick example, I truly try to walk the walk and talk the talk, you know, in my personal life and in my professional life. One of the ways I do it in my personal life is that again, I am unabashedly a Unitarian Universalist. That's very important to my identity, because I don't know if either of you know much about the UUs, but you know, we believe in social justice. This is our thing, you know, and not just recently. I mean, going back centuries, you know, the UUs have been on the forefront of doing community outreach and inviting well, certainly LGBT people. We're a welcoming congregation. That's all you use. Um we have a new church here in new building here in Petaluma, California, which is where I live, and it's a historical building. So the it's a beautiful building, but it's not ADA compliant. So, you know, we have to make sure that it's ADA compliant, right? Even though it's a historical building. And how do we do that? So
Get a
what,
ramp, like make
yeah,
a ramp,
you
right?
know, that's
Get
what
a
we're
ramp.
doing.
It's not that costly, right?
It's not right, exactly. So, but it's so interesting when you are in these spaces with people who are not at the forefront of sort of quote unquote doing the right things. They're hindered for whatever reasons. But you know, people are conscious. That's what it will take to make things happen. So, and I'm grateful to be at this place in my life, at this state in my life, you know, to be surrounded by people conscious. And when I'm not, then it's my obligation to let them know, you know,
Great.
this relationship can continue, you know. So I'm sorry, David.
Oh, I just want to do a quick time check that we have about
Yeah.
3 or 4 minutes. I don't want to wrap up, but I did want to say a couple things that would love to have you back with some of those new publications. And I know my Oakland Rotary is really excited about having you talk. So we'll have to connect about what you want might be good to present to them. Maybe some of those case studies on the equity and inclusion. I really think you're such a role model for me, and that to be an academic, you don't have to be kind of buried in the books. You can be out in the real world and be a leader on these issues and combine both the practicality and the intellectual side. And I think also I call you a boundary crosser, where you have your kind of feet, one foot in the real world, the other foot in academia. And we just need more people like you who share your philosophy for robust debate and inclusion. And I think, you see this in public policy, where just because something fails somewhere that wasn't done accurately, it doesn't mean it's a bad idea. It means there's just a unique thing. And that's why you need this debate and kind of people like you who are going to look at those case studies and say, here's a model for how to do it the right way, or a model for a way that worked in one place and kind of why it works. So I don't know.
David, if I may, I will just share, and I thank you for your kind words. But I've been fortunate in that I've had wonderful professors through years, but I try to really be the professor who gets it, who understands their students, who I want my students to feel as though I'm accessible. That's why my students have my cell phone, right? And in all these years, I will tell you and Erica, no student has ever called me up just to say hi, or prank call me, when they've called and text, most times text me, it's because they have a question about the course paper or assignment or something. And but I do want them to have access to me, and I want them to know that academia is more than just what we learn in the classroom. It is also, like I tell my students when we are learning in public policy, listen for what people are not saying, right? Because that gives you somewhat of an even bigger picture. So, yeah.
Well put. Well, Erica,
I appreciate your accent, Dr. Richard, and I resonate with you and what you're saying, and I'm excited to see where we can deepen and serve and support more. And thank you for coming on and sharing with us.
Oh, it's been my great pleasure. I
Again.
enjoyed the moment of this. So
yeah, and I'd love to get some of the links to your book, or I need to get a copy of some of the new publications, and then maybe we can have you back on next year sometime and drill down on a few more of these current event issues. And also we'll help promote you when you come to Oakland Rotary, or find something that might work for you there to present on some of this important work. Yeah.
Sure. The spring semester is the fall semester, which we're in now, is a sort of heavy travel period for me with conferences and whatnot. But my main conference next spring is online, which is really quite funny, because one would think that it should have been online last year and in person this year, but for whatever reason, the conference organizers, and I think it had to do with the hotel or something. But anyway, so in other words, I will be in place during the spring semester. So I'm happy to accommodate you guys anywhere I can. So.
Okay, perfect. Well, we're going to leave it there for today for the ripple effect. Erica, thanks for being here. And, I really enjoyed our conversation. We look forward to continuing the conversation, Dr. Johnson.
Thank you. And if I can just say, Erica, there's someone at my UU church in Petaluma who graduated from UVM.
Okay. There's a lot of us. What's their name?
Oh, that's a good question. I didn't know his name.
I think I have you in my phone, so you can tell me all about that. And
text me, and I will text you.
Like we have this beating Vermont heart. Like my heart is right over there with that amazing place. And
I love Vermont. Everyone should go to Vermont.
Well, I'm going to end the recording here, folks, but we can talk offline. And thanks everyone for joining us on the Ripple Effect. We'll see you next week. And great work, Richard.